Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cartographer community meeting. Now in every other week cadence. And the goal of this session is to share updates and what's new in the project, discuss some other stuff that matters to the community. Feel free to add yourself to attend this list and also your affiliation. Any new faces? I don't know if Tim and Matt, if this is your first time in this meeting, feel free to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, this is definitely my first time. I think so for Matt as well. Hi, I'm Tim. I work at VMware. I'm involved a lot with the Cloud Foundry side of things and our CF on Kubernetes efforts. I'm here just to learn more about what's going on with Cartographer and particularly around what y'all are doing with the better status visibility, because we're interested in that stuff. So, hey.
Welcome, Tim. What about you, Matt?
Hey, sorry, I'm on my phone because my work laptop's having some internet trouble at the moment. Yeah, I work with Tim also on CF on Kate, and I'm here for basically the same reason. We're thinking about using Cartographer, and there's some features we'd like to talk about that you proposed.
Yeah, feel free to add whatever you would like to discuss to add it there to the open mind discussion section. So we can have it here. Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, well, the TLDR, what's in the project this week? Well, several things, but one that I wanted to note here is the tutorials. Team work on having a set of step-by-step tutorials that really take you from ground zero to start building supply chains and using some features of Cartographer. I find it really easy to follow. And yeah, they are amazing. But we know we could do even better. So we will ask you to use the tutorials. And if you could lend us some minutes from your time, we would like to have a conversation with you on feedback, getting your feedback on tutorials and documentation. And in exchange for your valuable time, we are giving you a bundle of Cartographer swag. So if you like to share your insights with us on documentation and tutorials, please sign up here in this form so we can set up a short call and collect your feedback. Thank you. Okay.
David, just before you
yeah.
go on, I'd love to, it's a shame he's not here, but I'd just like to big kudos to Wishuma for all of his efforts on the tutorials. We're all really impressed and he put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah, it's a tremendous effort and making it really simple to follow, to understand, and explaining the why behind every option, every configuration. So yeah, it's amazing. Okay. Next up is the time of the month again to recognize our top contributors. We have 3 categories and we are recognizing 1 per month. So this month we wanted to give a shout out to our content contributor of the month, Mr. Benoit Moussat. Due to time zone constraints, he couldn't join, but he's a field engineer, sales engineer at VMware, and he worked autonomously in a proposal that got accepted for KubeCon Europe, where he will present and demo Cartographer there. And that's amazing because this conference had an acceptance rate of 19%. I mean, for every 52 proposals, only 1 got accepted. So the work that Benoit did was amazing, and we wanted to recognize you, Benoit, and we'll do also a public shout out on social media, and we'll ship you nice swag so you can show your pride for the project at KubeCon. Awesome. All right, what team is working on a lot of stuff, right? Does anyone want to share about work on RFCs?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a lot of RFCs in the pipeline right now. I don't know, we don't normally go into detail on these. I think we just chat briefly about it. But one is having more status in the workload for individual resources. I don't know if that is the one the CF for Kate's folks are interested in. We're also looking to add events. Right now, we just have logs, and we're looking at emitting more Kubernetes events. And I don't know what the next one is. 783. Is that yours, Rash?
Yes, this one's just the one where the resources are. I don't know why the link pasted like that. This is just where the resource status, submission status is per resource instead of just the first one.
Cool. If anyone has any questions about those, I don't think this meeting we usually go into too deep, but happy to talk to the CF for Kate's folks, maybe if in the open mic, if there's any questions, or feel free to comment on those RFCs.
And then there's one in the works, which we haven't got a submission for yet, but there's one coming for artifact tracing. The ability to work out whether an input has and what it results in, what output it results in.
Yeah, Matt says that the stand resource status is the one they are interested in. I don't know if Matt or Tim have any comments around this RFC.
I personally haven't had a chance to read it too deep, so I'll probably give it a look and add comments if I had them later. I don't know if Matt has anything specific right now, though.
Yeah, I've been keeping up with it. I think it looks good to me. I know there's a lot of discussion around the structure of it. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I think the biggest thing that we are looking forward to, though, is just knowing the success or failure status or health or of each of the resources that's stamped out. So just excited about the idea generally.
Yeah, feel free to add your comments, observations, objections there to the RFCs. New RFC for artifact tracing, but not
Yeah, I just
UI
mentioned
yet.
that one. Sorry, I just mentioned that one. That's done.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big one. I don't know if Rush would like to comment on the splitting the site repo out of the Cartographer repo.
Yeah, so you'd be able to show the new site repository. Most people won't be able to see this yet as it's still marked private, but it will be public very soon. Contributions to the documentation and the website will be in a separate repository now. Much faster to go through sanity checks, separating out from the code. And that's close to landing. We're just waiting on approval.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes things easier and contributing to the site. Awesome. All right, next up, building out information architecture documentation.
Started an initiative on describing the information architecture, the user perspective if they're at the CLI. I don't know if anyone cares for me to share on that yet, but that's just some work that's ongoing at the moment. If anyone's interested, you can always reach out to me.
Is there any draft on this? Anything public yet or not?
I mean, I can share it publicly, but it's probably more meaningless than
No.
helpful, as it's just a bunch of graphs at the moment. So it's sort of like undirected at the moment. But I do want to get something up there soon.
Right. And also work towards a list of core principles. Yeah, that's a big one also. Any comment on this? I mean, I found this, once it's public, we hope folks find it not only useful, but you may contribute to it. The core principles, as I understand this, is basically to define what Cartographer does, what the main goals, the main issues it's designed to address, and what it doesn't do. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And we had our first session to talk through them. Great conversation with the team, and we'll be able to share something out pretty soon here.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. All right. Yeah, from previous meeting, we didn't have any action items, so we can move here to template options using best match from Marty.
Yeah, I brought this up to the team and we said we wanted to mention it in one of these community discussions. And we were hoping to discuss it before we released 030, but it already happened. But basically, we kind of unintendedly switched the logic for how template option matching works from the way we originally implemented it, though the 030 was the first time it was ever actually released publicly, so practically there's no difference. But the way template selection works, like when you have resources and you have two different templates that you can choose from, that now follows best match. That follows best matching. So if you had like one option that had a single match fields entry and then another option that had two match fields entries, if all three of those entries matched, the one with the two match field entries would be the template we choose over the other one because of this best matching principle. And I think best matching obviously makes a lot of sense from like the supply chain / delivery level, though I'm concerned that it's not the best approach at the template level, because like just like a bad like example off the top of my head, like if you had one template that you want to go for whenever it's source.get, you only need one match fields to express that. But if you had another template option that, you know, you only want to, you know, you have a second one that's like, if it's, you know, image or something, then do X, and then, but like only if it's image and something else, like you also have a param, you know, and then you have a third option that's like one other thing. It's not necessarily the case that just because you needed two match fields to express the behavior you wanted, that suddenly makes it a better choice for you, right?
But those three examples should be mutually exclusive, right? And
I
like,
guess the way I
can
said it,
see-
yes.
And I could see being like best match being the right path forward for templates, being useful if you wanted to do something like match on source.get and then match on like source.get as well as some other param to be more specific. And then you could have like a fallback in that case, right?
Yeah, I hear that.
I think the reason I like it, the way it's implemented, and this is like ad hoc reasoning, but the reason I like it the way it's implemented is because it is exactly the same as top level matching. So you can reason about them the same way. That's not the greatest argument if it introduces a really bad user experience, but I like it for that reason.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's necessarily wrong. Just wanted to call it out because it wasn't, the RFC that added these options was not explicit about this. And I think we had all kind of assumed it wouldn't be best matching. And then it was kind of accidentally made into best matching. And maybe that was a good thing, but I wanted to call it out and make sure we all agreed on that. But it sounds like no one's too concerned about it being best match, so we can just move forward with that.
And it's not like breaking, right? Because there was
No, we had
nothing,
never,
like
yeah,
we never released the other one, so.
yeah. If you were using a pre-release and then you switch to this, yes, but we don't have any contracts with pre-releases.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, another comment around this topic. We will move to next one. Roadmap discussion by Samuel. I don't know, Sammy, if you want to share your screen, drive us through the Miro board. Or...
Yeah, that would be great. Hey, folks. I'm a newcomer to the project, working as a product manager for Cartographer. Is it okay, David, if we use most of the rest of the time for this? Is there other stuff on the agenda you want to get through first?
No, I believe we can use rest of the time for this.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, so the Miro board is there. Would invite everybody to jump into it, since it'll be a bit of an interactive session. I'll drop it in the chat as well. Let me know if you're having trouble accessing it. It should be available to everyone. And if you haven't used Miro before, it's sort of like a digital whiteboard. So that's just kind of the concept. And yeah, so basically what we wanted to do during this session is give people a sense of, here, let me clear up some tabs. Is to talk a little bit about the open source roadmap. So yeah, so I threw in some fun photos of some cartographers from around the world for inspiration. This is our agenda. The ask is kind of for everyone to read some of these existing items that we've got across here, and then add things that you think may be missing, and then we'll just kind of go around the circle and have everyone who feels comfortable explain one item that they understand, make sure everyone has context on what the items are. And then the outcome of the session is that we're going to have folks to sort of do their own kind of self-prioritization. You know, if it was completely up to you, what would be the order in which we would tackle these things? What's their value to you? And then we'll do a little bit of a share out after that. How does that sound? What questions do folks have about the agenda? All right, great. So let's dive right in. Want to give folks maybe a minute or two here to take some time to read these, and then we can dive into explaining them. And if you want to go ahead and add things that aren't here that you think would be good, go ahead. Alrighty, let's dive in. Anybody want to kick us off to explain one of these items on the board? I see Rosh is adding some stuff. You want to talk through some of the things you're adding?
Sure. Under chores, I've got to reduce duplication in core code. We've got some duplication that's annoying us. We now, even before we get to a new RFC for blueprints, I think we can use new generics to, or just better abstractions to clean some of that up. There's just some code improvements I think we can do, and some abstractions we can build. Then there is improved doc site UX, which is separate from the docs content. The doc site itself just needs some CSS work and some layout and design issues that could be tackled. And I added one more, which is patch the live editor with an options visualization. I just like to have the live editor visualizing what's currently supported and make sure it's got the latest 030 CRD syntax support.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. We'll just kind of go down the order of my screen here. Marty, is there one of these you feel comfortable explaining, giving a one-liner on?
I didn't add any of these. Sorry, I missed the introduction because I was gone when you introduced.
Oh, no, that's fine. Just anything on the board, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with all these things on some level, but
Sure. I mean, I guess like the core product, the yellow one, the fifth yellow one, sitting by itself, allow resources to surface status and errors up to the workload. It's part of like the RC we were talking about before. Just allowing the templates to kind of define status of the resources that they're stamping out so that those can be reflected on the workload, and users can kind of go to the workload to get the source of truth for all the resources that have been created by the blueprint, rather than having to like go use some external tool or you know, use kubectl get on every single resource to find the information they most likely care about.
cool. I'm just realizing maybe for the sake of time, it might be better to focus on ones people feel like they don't know what they are. Does anybody see something here? They're like, what is that?
I don't know if we're talking about the right side, but I am curious about the item that's connecting Kate's objects to workloads.
Yeah, does someone feel comfortable speaking to that? Nobody. Okay, cool. Well,
Who wrote
Sorry,
the
which item is it?
this one.
Oh, connect. Yeah, I'm not sure.
just like for storing
mean-
state about an owner?
I think no, I think they did there is that like some applications when they get deployed, they need to consume either some credentials or some configuration via respectively like secrets and config maps. I would guess that's what this is about, but I'm not entirely sure.
I know in the past we've talked about the idea that there might be other objects in the cluster that the supply chain probably wants to know about, but isn't actually responsible for stamping out directly. So like, you know, like even something as simple as like a secret that I might use and that my whole supply chain relies on, but like the supply chain has no knowledge about it. And so maybe even just like watching these objects for changes could be related to that, but I'm not sure either, to be honest.
Yeah, I remember this being a big deal in regards to Runnable, where we have the like selector field in the spec. So I guess the suggestion there was like, oh, we could, let's say, I'm a KPAC image and I make use of a service account, and I could like keep track of changes to that service account, or I don't know, the secret attached to it, and then reconcile if that changes. Okay. Cool.
Nice. Thank you. And any others here that folks are curious about or wondering what they mean? I think some of this stuff is definitely a little vaguer. I think this area probably for the session is better to focus on.
I added a comment that the blueprint architecture, that I think the design is in scope. We may not reach any implementations within that period, April to
Okay.
June. Yeah,
Great.
that's my concern.
Yeah, that's
What's
a good
the-
call out.
What's the Kate's resources as deployment targets?
That's about using like vanilla Kate's deployments instead of Knative. But
Just in our examples.
I think so. That's what I understand that to be. I don't know if someone else has a differing definition.
I think we're supposed to make sure that
Supportable.
it's super workable and probably in TCE.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is like that, and the new one that Rash added. Those are kind of like the outliers, right? All the other cards here do actually have RFCs that we can pin them to at this point, right?
Nice, nice. What other ones are folks wondering about or not sure what they mean?
What's the RFC for improving the release process? Is that actually in our backlog?
I don't know if it actually is. It was. I know it's. Maybe you could speak to this one. Josh, I know it's the top of your one of the lists you shared with me.
Not sure what list you're talking about, but I can kind of speak to this. Yes, so I think this was a discussion that we had a community meeting or maybe something. Anyway, we now have this like multi-step process, right? Where we release an open source and then, you know, we have this packaging repo where things get packaged up for TCE and stuff like that. And so it's more just like streamlining that process in a more automated fashion and really just outlining, you know, what's expected at every step.
On RFC, right? It's just find out what we
Probably
have to
just-
do,
No, probably not
documenting it
RFC.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Cool, cool. What else we got? What other pieces are folks wondering about?
I have lots of questions on the and beyond, but I don't know if we want to focus on that. So
Yeah, I think most of us do. I think these are very rough ideas that have been shared or that are out there in the ether from our from some of the technical leaders. So yeah, I certainly can't speak to them, and maybe without them being here, it doesn't make sense to dive into it. But
I think the published Kate's events from supply chain, that one, I think like this concern has been raised before. It's kind of like we want a solution and we don't have a problem. It's like we want events, but events are there to help surface information. And it's not as clear to me what information users are currently feeling the pain of missing. And I feel like that's a sticking point on that RFC. It's like we're trying to guess what's useful information without any feedback of like what information do people feel they don't have right now and want. But I understand what the thing is. I'm curious about the user feedback that has led to it.
yeah, any of our adopters on the call or folks who are considering adopting Cartographer have any thoughts on that?
As an adopter, I really wouldn't see that coming. Like it's super helpful. Even when just troubleshooting, like figuring out, oh, like did anything even change for this particular resource that I'm looking at, right? And like if it did, when was that? Like, is it changing every 10 seconds? Is it not? Or GC, right? Like when we switch from one, let's say selecting against one supply chain, selects against another now, seeing the like, oh, these objects got deleted by GC because so on and so forth can be like super helpful, I think. So giving that extra dimension to the like conditions that we have that are like more or less just representing, hey, like I see myself in this state. While with the event, you can see like how you got there, when and how many times you're flip-flopping, stuff like that.
I have received a counter argument on events for GC. So if you could go into the events RFC and put your opinion on that one particularly, we just would love that. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I would also second Pat of being able to understand the history of, why something happened or what the kind of history of the workload is through the events. But I think the other part that for me events would be helpful with is there are certain integrations that can be done, especially around monitoring, that do a much better job with doing that with events than do with just following the status. There are certain event exporters, things that can help in terms of getting visibility into the history of a workload, not necessarily just during doing a kubectl describe and seeing the events, but actually things that could be triggered outside that are kind of out of band of the supply chain that can be triggered off of the events of the state changes along the way, with the benefit of that not needing to clutter up the status as well with additional information possibly. So the events could be an easy way of doing possibly things around artifact tracking, possibly different data that could be thrown into events that don't bring you so close to the maximum size of a CR in Kubernetes that would not be fun to reach. So I think that it's a beneficial thing there as well.
Yeah,
it's also the only place, sorry, Marty.
Go for it.
It's the only place you can get histographic information, right? Like it's the easiest place to put histograms, right? Because you use third-party tools to observe them.
Right, I have no doubt that the events are useful. It's just like, what events are people caring about is what I'm asking.
Which
and
is what I was going to get to. I want more feedback on that event. The people have got opinions here, so it'd be great to hear them on that. RFC.
Yeah, like the adopters, like what information we feel we're missing, and like what information do you, like Sky, like you mentioned, those outside tools that can make decisions off of these events, like what types of events would you anticipate making a decision off of? Because I think Rash's RFC did a really great job listing out a bunch of really potentially really useful events, but it's very hard for me to say like which one of these are actually useful and an adopter developer would actually care about. And Rash has a really long list, and like it might be like if we just emit all of them from the start, that might be useless because there's too much there and it's too hard to get at your actual useful data. And I would love to see some actual feedback from people about which ones they really care about.
I might actually start a discussion too, so that we realize that the RFC is not the end all and be all. It's only introducing events. So if we start a discussion, we can then track that. I know this is off topic, Sam, so we'll get back to.
No, this is great. This is
okay.
Great.
But yeah, I think just so that also people are aware that they can keep on discussing the kind of events that are going to be valuable, and that it doesn't have to be on the RFC to get it implemented.
I will, I'll comment on the RFC later today.
Terrific. Alrighty. Well, we have about 25 minutes left, so I would love, if it's all right with folks, last ask, which ones of these do you feel like you'd love an explanation on before we dive into the prioritization exercise? Okay. All right. So the next part of the exercise here is that we're going to ask you to choose your top 7 from this list of 12, and out of that list, order them in a ranked list. So yeah, that's sort of our exercise for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Here are the items we have available to you. Yeah, go ahead and make some copies and make your list. Oops. So yeah, here the master can be over here, and you can go ahead and claim one of these sections, and yeah. I'll set a timer for 5 minutes and see where we're at.
How many are we choosing again?
7.
Thanks.
Somebody's two-factor code there.
What's that?
979495.
Clipboard sharing.
Low. And not to change the exercise halfway through, but what I should have said is if you want to add something that's not represented to your 7, that's also totally fine. Okay, and we're at just about at time here, so looks like some people are still finishing up, which is great, but I think for the sake of time, we'll just get started here. I'm going to focus on some adopters, contributors to start. Dave Walter, would you like to share a little bit about your prioritized list?
Sure. Let me turn my video on as well. There we go. I prioritized the two chores first, just because I feel like paying down technical debt is important. Making the code more maintainable and extendable feels like a good thing to target on first before we embark on new features. Personally, I'm always a fan of improved release processes, so I put that high on the list. One pain point coming to the next one pain point I felt trying to learn about Cartographer was holes in the documentation. So I think improving docs content would be very good. Whether that should be the site UX, I'm not sure. They kind of feel like they somewhat go hand in hand to me. And then from a consumption standpoint, the first feature that I looked at was the surfacing errors up to the workload, so that we can just say, okay, we've created the workload. That's the thing we're going to look at to figure out where the problem is if something's not, if a resource hasn't been created the way we expect it to have been. And similarly, being able to trace through that the input that a user created generated the expected output, seemed to follow on naturally from that. The last two, again, just seemed like they would be useful from a user's perspective of having supply chains generate events that we can see, and simplifying the API.
Cool. So big visibility themes. Awesome. And when you said that there's some holes in the docs, any specifics there that around that pain point you were feeling?
I think it was mainly just that we were struggling to figure out how to build supply chains for our particular needs, and that it wasn't clear. I think that the big thing that stuck in my mind was we kept being told about deliverables and deliveries, but there were no examples of that. All of the examples just used templates. And so it was very hard to figure out, oh, okay, well, we're supposed to be using this thing, but we have no idea how to use it. And I know Matt's done a lot more digging into that than I have, but that was just my recollection from when I did the spike on this.
That's still the case in the docs I've seen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. Yeah, with that, I'll bring it over to Matt.
Sure, yeah. So I kind of just prioritized in terms of what the features that are either blocking the use case we have in mind or would be most useful for it. So the one that's actually blocking us is not having the success or failure status or health, unhealth status on the workloads for the stamped resources. So that was my top. And then the rest below this are either would be useful for maybe allowing us to add additional features on top of Cartographer, or in like having visibility for users so they can see, for example, oh, so sorry, I skipped over one. So having Kate's resources as a deployment target is important for us also, because we're probably going to be starting with that either with stateful sets or deployments. So verifying that case is important for us. Artifact tracing would be useful either for allowing us to add features or just making it more visible what's happening in the supply chain for debugging purposes. Similarly, I don't think we have any feature needs for the events, but I think just in terms of debugging and understanding the state of a workload, the events would be incredibly helpful, as others have said. And then just, yeah, I think that a cartographer is very complicated, and I think that anything we could do to simplify and make the docs a little easier to approach would be really helpful for new users. And then I actually honestly didn't have a clear idea of what this this one blueprint architecture, simplify architecture item was, but it sounded good on the face of it. And then along the same lines as just improving the doc site for newcomers.
Cool. Awesome. Scott,
Yeah.
to hear your
So,
thoughts.
yeah. So for me, I think definitely the surfacing of status and errors to the workload is by far number one, because that's key for a lot of, I think, end users. I think publishing Kubernetes events will just open up a lot of options and makes debuggability much easier. Patching the live editor with options, I would love that because I use the live editor for all the supply chains that I build, and I build 2 or 3 a week, different ones. So having it with options will be awesome now that I've started to use them. And artifact tracing, I think, is a really nice thing to have as well. Maven artifacts, I'm starting to see people really looking into that. And not necessarily just Maven, but overall passing in, you know, whatever artifacts into Cartographer, I think will be great. I do think that the simplifying of the architecture, and my guess is that that's referring to the runnable cluster run template being generated automatically, that was talked about in previous meetings. I think it's nice. I personally have gotten so used to building out the cluster run templates and everything that it's not that difficult for me to understand anymore, but I can understand why it is for people. So that would be a nice thing to have. And the out-of-the-box supply chains for TCE, I have my own out-of-the-box supply chains, so like I'm cool with that, but I've heard that from a lot of TCE users of App Toolkit and Cartographer, so I think adding that in will just gain more usage in the open source community of Cartographer, which in the end just brings more people in. I didn't add anything around docs because I don't use docs. I learn from breaking things. So that's why, to me, less important. And as a non-maintainer, other things also become less important to myself. This is purely looking at a selfish level of what I would like, not what should be done.
I think that's what we want.
Exactly.
What we want to hear.
So from me, from a purely selfish perspective, this would definitely be the order of what I would like to see.
Awesome. Awesome. Would love to hear from Tim next.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add from what Matt and Dave, like on my team, like already said. Like definitely the resource status stuff is what's our immediate like blocker for us. And then like I could see how like artifact tracing and events and stuff could be useful in the future, but like it's not an immediate use for us, so don't have much feedback there to give. And then like the rest of my stuff is like new user experience, like docs and things. Cause like, I feel like when I was first reading the docs, I already knew what all these resources were. So it was like, but it's still hard for me to like find them on the site and like actually know like what I would use them for. So I think the like one-on-one tutorial we've added is like a really good start, but like maybe some more like problem focused docs or something like, this is my problem, this is what I'm trying to solve, and like this is how I can do it, that sort of thing.
Awesome.
Can I quick ask?
Please.
Can we please maybe start a discussion on the kinds of problems we're trying to solve or something like out of band of here? But one of our struggles creating documentation is, oh, we could describe a myriad things you might want to try and solve. We can't write that many docs and it would be a library. So we need to start prioritizing on the kinds of like higher level issues people are trying to resolve using a supply chain.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And like, I think our team, our problems are kind of niche, but I'm just like thinking of like onboarding new users, like problems like hey, I want to like sign my images, like this is how I would like make a supply chain to do so. Something that like makes it more discoverable from that like perspective.
Yeah, I just want to start that discussion
Yeah.
because I didn't know that that was on the top of anyone's mind. So, do you know what I mean? It would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
great to get more of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd happy to like
Anybody
help
else want to
brainstorm.
chime in with a with a problem focused doc they'd love to see?
I think there's definitely one out there, which is how can I create multiple images and package them, not deliver them, if you like. Well, deliver them to a package repository rather than deliver them to a running Kubernetes service. That's one I've heard.
Rather than deploy them.
It heavily relates to the fan out, fan in story in the future, but it's just like if we start actually capturing these things, it'd be amazing to get some use case stories.
Yeah, anybody else have a problem focused doc that comes to mind for them? Maybe Dave, Matt, Scott.
I think that from my perspective in docs, it's less so. I think the tutorials, first of all, made a huge improvement to the docs. So that's really important. I think that docs overall that I find the most useful are not the ones that actually say how to do something, but how to approach it. And those docs are the hardest ones to write, but they're by far the most beneficial and also stay relevant over time. So instead of building out a full solution, it's talking about how you would decide to use something or how you would approach a situation, how to build a supply chain theoretically almost, not necessarily going down into the bits and bytes of writing it and things like that, but how you would actually logically build out your supply chain before actually going to the project itself, so that you have the data so that when you go to build the supply chain, it's easier. So kind of a higher level above the actual nitty-gritty writing of the lines of YAML.
Yeah, and I realize maybe what I'm actually thinking of is more like almost like marketing or blog posts or something, just something that helps people know that have a problem, but they don't know anything about Cartographer, that they can discover it and like learn like this is how I can solve my problem with it. It's just like that's a sort of thing that I feel like is missing from the current like set of docs and things we've got out there.
Got it.
Yeah.
So kind of bringing the tangible, bringing this abstract and you know, kind of broadly useful tool into some very tangible rooted situations.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something that I would like to communicate to the community, that they are welcome to submit blog posts to the Cartographer site. I think community contributions on the Cartographer website would be welcome as well, if no one wants to host their own blog posts. Otherwise, we'll link to them in the resources.
Awesome. Well, let me jump over to some folks who haven't spoken up as much. Emily or Sam, do you want to share your prioritization?
I can go.
Okay, yeah, go. You go first.
I'll just do high level. Sorry, I gotta scroll back over. Yeah, chores, just if we don't prioritize them, they'll never get done. So that was that. And then I'd really like to see some OOTP supply chains and TCE just for more community adoption. Those are basically top three. Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, so I feel the wants for the surfacing errors. That's why I had it there. I put blueprint architecture and API evolution higher because I feel like the cost of doing those things later just it's going to increase, and you know, we have more people adopting. That's going to be like more ripple out kind of effect, and I kind of feel like it's a good lead up to doing before reducing other duplication in code. But that's just my feeling. Artifact tracing, yeah, lots of people want it. Events sound super compelling. kind of weighted down here because like if we're going to re-architect things, then the more stuff we build, more stuff has to maybe come along with it. Yeah, not much else to add there for the rest, really.
Cool. Awesome. I know we got a few other folks who didn't get to share. I know we only have 2 minutes here. Just wanted to make sure we're good to finish these last 2 minutes. David, is there anything else you wanted to do to close out?
Yeah, well, not much. And yeah, different to say thank you. This is a great exercise. What will be the next step for this?
I think the next step here is that we want to write some kind of a README or a blog post that just describes some of these things we're planning to do in the next quarter. So to give list these out and give a line or two on each of them, as well as some of the things we're thinking about in the future, linking to the RFCs, asking for more feedback, that kind of thing, as well as bringing the feedback that some of our community members have shared today into some of the live RFCs, and continuing the discussion.
Oh, yeah, there's an issue for this, for publishing a roadmap, and there are some examples that we shared previously in some other projects, how they organize a roadmap. That will be a file in the repo. But it's an example on how to organize it to make it traceable and easier to update. So definitely you will need to check it out. All right. Well, thank you all for. Yeah.
Sorry, David, before we wrap up, I just want to thank everyone from the community for sharing your perspective. This was amazing. It's awesome to hear your wants and needs and stuff like that. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all for attending, for sharing your insights and your request. Okay, thank you for attending. See you next meeting.